The world has changed. I can feel it in the earth. I can feel it in the water. I can smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost, for few now remember the ancient ways of strength training. It began with the forging of the great bells, which were given to the great disciplines who could wield them. Cables to the bodybuilders, immortal and fairest of the disciplines, who seek symmetry and aesthetics over function. Dumbbells to the CrossFitters, hybrid athletes who crave novelty and variety. To the strength athletes who, above all else, crave power. But they were all of them deceived, for another tool was made. In the fires of old, the blacksmiths shaped them simple, unyielding, eternal, a handle fused to an iron sphere, a tool of power, of endurance, of functionality beyond measure. In the dark heart of the forge, in the fire of toil and sweat, the kettlebell was shaped, a tool unlike any other. One bell to rule them all, one bell to refine them, one bell to test them all, and in the struggle grind them. This week's episode, The Lord of the Swings. Thank you, listener, for indulging my monologue. I want to talk to you about kettlebells, how and why they're the best thing for fitness and training, why I think they're so great, and why you should too, and maybe even how you can use them. Welcome to the RF Fitness Podcast, brought to you by rffitness.net, your source for online coaching built for and by busy grown-ups just like you who are on the quest for health and strength in everyday life. I am your host, Rob Finlayson, certified older brother fitness coach, and once again, the ranter with no banter. Chapter 1, concerning kettlebells. You all know how much I like to define a term, so let's start with the obvious. A cannonball with a handle. That's basically what a kettlebell is. They were used in ancient Japan, China, and Greece. Some version or prototypical model of them appear in the archaeological record. Really anywhere there's a history of strength training, whether it's for athletes or soldiers or gymnasts or personal development. They're then used in Russia and Eastern Europe as market weights. This is the specific modern sort of kettlebell shape, the morphological history that we see now today with the round bottom and the handle on the top. Supposedly, they were used in markets as counterweights on scales. You would load your grain or what have you on one side of the scale, and a large iron ball would be hefted onto a hook on the other side of the scale to find how many poods it weighed. That's P-O-O-D-S. One pood, I believe, is something like 37.5 pounds. 1.5 would be about 53 pounds, and then the 2 poods, obviously, is about 70-something pounds. And then, of course, as peasants do, they would get bored and show off how strong they are by seeing who can lift the heavy market weight above their head, swing it between their legs, throw it as far as they can down Main Street, that sort of thing. Eventually, this practice was adopted by military and police training programs before emigrating to the USA in the early 2000s, credited mostly to one guy, Pavel Zatzulin. Came from Russia. There he was a elite trainer of Russian police and Spetsnaz and Spec Ops guys. I brought them here in like 2000, 2001 when they began to grow in popularity, kind of underground. They really hit a peak during lockdown of the pandemic in 2020, but are still considered sort of unconventional training at this point. And that's probably because they're not really great for bodybuilding, and there's very little money in kettlebells for gym equipment providers. However, they still are used today, mostly by weirdos and Luddites and tactical and combat athletes around the world. So, people like me. They do have some unique properties which give them unique benefits, though. The weight distribution being directly under the handle gives them variable and realistic resistance. Specific movements like the swing and snatch offer unmatched power and endurance development. The timing, balance, rhythm, variable resistance that the kettlebell offers all combined to develop a very coordinated, powerful athlete with a deep gas tank and a grip worthy of wielding Excalibur. They may be the best tools available for fat loss training, as kettlebell workouts involve extended periods of an elevated heart rate, compound muscle groups, low impact resistance, and therefore high repeatability. Complexes and swings are especially good examples of this. These use large, multiple muscle groups for high reps. Your heart rate goes way up, and your whole body has to work hard all at the same time, which introduces a fairly prodigious dose of the exercise stress response that your body will then have to adapt to, first by burning fuel like calories and fat, and then by getting stronger by building and maintaining muscle. The portability of kettlebells is also a huge benefit. You can take them on the road, you can take them to your in-laws, on vacation, to the cabin, to outside. And this last one is a really big deal because strength training outdoors in fresh air and sun has enormous benefits, including reduced inflammation, lower blood pressure, improved cardiovascular performance, and even improved recovery time and mental health benefits. Now, it should be easy to imagine why bringing a kettlebell outside is easier than, say, bringing a barbell or 6 dumbbells or a cross training machine or a rowing machine, right? The main drawback to kettlebells, and there are drawbacks, the main one is the skill floor. The skill floor refers to how good you have to be at something to be considered proficient at it. Like the skill floor for an exercise machine, like a back extension machine or a leg press, is pretty low. You walk up to the machine, look at it. Generally, there's going to be instructions on the machine. The machine does exactly one thing in exactly one range of motion. You can easily selectorize the weights. Basically, it's foolproof. Very low skill floor. Dumbbells are higher than that. Barbells a little bit higher than that. The skill floor for kettlebells, I think, as free weights go, has to be the highest. Part of this is the way that the kettlebell seems to come alive in many movements at different times, and it can feel very alien to someone who's coming from a background with machines or running or even other free weights like dumbbells and kettlebells, dumbbells and barbells. But I encourage you nonetheless to be brave and seek out these challenges in order to reap these rewards. The benefits that you get to your grip, your timing, endurance, and movement quality often actually start up as the very obstacles that keep you from feeling very comfortable with a kettlebell. But with even a little bit of regular practice at a light and reasonable weight, at a light and reasonable pace, you can become proficient enough to turn those same obstacles into benefits. How do we do that? With Chapter 2, A Nudge Out the Door. Getting started with kettlebells is the hardest part. Where do you find them? What should you do? How do you know you're being safe? Well, this is where the adventure begins. Now, most gyms will have at least a small selection of kettlebells, and there's a couple different species, we'll say, that we'll find, and that's usually plastic or rubber versus iron and coated iron. Let's pick these apart a little bit. Plastic kettlebells suck and should be avoided. They are often brittle, sand, or loose concrete, and are often too light to really even be effective at whatever you're trying to do. These are the ones you'll see on sale at like Walgreens. A kettlebell that is too light to be effective is, I would say, anything under 15 pounds. That's not to say that a lightweight of 15 pounds. Doesn't have its place in training, even with a kettlebell. But with a lot of these particular types of movements that we use with the kettlebell, like a swing specifically or clean, it has to be heavy enough. It has to be solid enough that it interacts with gravity in a certain way that won't work if it's so light that you can accidentally manhandle it so hard that your technique is going to be injurious, flagrantly injurious. Rubber kettlebells are kind of uncommon, but they're not terrible. These ones usually wind up looking like medicine balls with a plastic handle kind of stapled on. They're a good option if nothing else is available. I think sometimes you'll see people like smashing them into swings and stuff. I think that's not a bad idea to combine implements in that way, but I think it's also completely unnecessary. It's sort of like you're combining two things and just losing the benefits of both of them without getting the powers of both of them. You could just get a medicine ball and a kettlebell and do much better than getting a kettleball. Oh, I should mention this early on. They're kettlebells, not kettleballs. I will go crazy if you call them that to my face. Iron kettlebells, with or without a rubber plastic coating or bottom, is probably the most common. These are great for learning the moves, and you can achieve a lot with these. Usually, if you found iron bells at your gym, you have at least a pair, and you can do a whole lot with these. I've seen most of these with like a little plastic black disc at the bottom, I suppose to protect gym floors. That doesn't, it changes the shape of the kettlebell and how it rests on the ground, but doesn't make a huge difference to the overall performance of the tool. So if that's what you have, great. If they've got the little like plastic coatings, like the orange ones, the SPRI, whatever, again, that's fine. That makes them easier to clean, whatever. Powder coated iron or coated iron. These are the type of kettlebells that I have and I use. If you have these in your gym, you are in a good gym. These should be the standard for use, and you can do pretty much anything with them. Chances are, if someone has gone to the trouble of having a powder coated iron kettlebells, they will have multiple sets of kettlebells. You will have someone cares about having kettlebells around. If you see these here, so you'll probably have a good selection to choose from. There's also like a secret off menu option. That's these steel competition style bells. These, if you have them in your gym, these were added either by someone who knows just a little bit about kettlebells or by someone who knows very, very, very much about kettlebells and is way into them. These are painted, colored steel, not iron, but steel bells with square handles. They're competition style GS bells, Gear Voice Sport, and they're perfect for that. They're perfect for Gear Voice Sport. It is a specific sport. I personally prefer hard style. I think more people get more out of that, but that's a me thing. Well, Rob, you say, wait, what's Gear Voice Sport? What's hard style? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about that a little bit. There's two main, we'll call them schools of training with kettlebells. You could think of kettlebells how they divert as you would often see or think about schools of martial arts. Like there's karate, and then there's like a bazillion sub studies, like subgenres of karate, like traditional karate. Kettlebells are, and how they are used and studied and thought about and perceived, or the people who use them are approached, I think, very similarly to a lot of traditional martial arts, and that is not on accident. Because hard style kettlebells have a base in their development, in the procedural development in karate, specifically Okinawan karate. They are the type of training that we do with them is built around generating explosive power and hardening the body. Things that are very important and characteristic of karate and karate training, like traditional Okinawan karate. The GS, the Gear Voice Sport style kettlebells for Gear Voice Sport is, like I said, sport specific. This is an extreme muscle endurance event. They're doing something called the long cycle, which is essentially a clean and jerk with double kettlebells. and they're doing as many reps as they can in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 plus minutes at a time without setting the weights down ever. Once you pick them up and you go, you go. And people are getting like hundreds of reps at a go here. And it's a sport. It's a sport. You know, it's not to say that there isn't like some great athletic development, like generalized athletic development, GPP, general physical preparedness, which is what we see a lot of kettlebells used for now in GS, but it'd be like doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for your general fitness. Like, it's very specific. When you look up kettlebells, you usually find content that is based very loosely on the hard style form of training, and that is this GPP stuff, general physical preparedness. That is where I kind of plant my flag. My base is in hard style because I'm RKC certified, but I use it for GPP. And the discipline has grown and evolved a lot over the years into this modern school of sorceries and iron that we enjoy today. So you have classes, and there's cardio stuff, and there's DVDs with it, and there's Kettle Works with an X and all these things. And people who are more into kettlebells than I am, yes, they are out there, would argue that like some forms are real and some are not real, and some are like fakers and some are posers, whatever. For what I do, for what I like, GPP and hardstyle is the most bang for your buck. I think it's the most enjoyable to do, the most fun. And it's what I have the most experience with. So take that for what you will. Where was I? You can also procure kettlebells for yourself if you're not at the gym or your gym doesn't have them. If your gym doesn't have kettlebells, get a new gym. Or, like I said, procure a kettlebell for yourself. They take up less room than barbell setups and are less costly than specialty equipment, and have no requirement for upkeep or repairs, unlike a elliptical or a echo bike that I have collecting dust in my home gym has cardio equipment in it that I haven't used in so long that I basically just hang things on it. Happens to me too. As free weights go, the initial investment for a new kettlebell can be alarming. I think I was talking to Rachel in a previous episode and explained to her that one kettlebell that I have is over $100, and she straight up gasped in disbelief. Right now on Amazon, a 35-pound kettlebell goes for around $40 to $50, which is honestly really not bad. But you can also get a lot of them secondhand from like Facebook Marketplace and the like. Like I said, they really hit their peak popularity during the pandemic 5 years ago. A lot of people panic bought them because they're amazing tools and they heard all about them, but then they decided they don't know what to do with them. They didn't like them, or they went back to their old gym, and now they're trying to get rid of that so-called dead weight in their basement. Their loss is your gain. Now, the question becomes, if I can find a way to procure for myself a kettlebell, what should it be? That is probably the biggest question. If you're going to get just one, it kind of matters. There's a couple of factors. In the literature, it divides it down into novice and experienced lifters, and then men and women. For a lot of reasons, I find the men and women delineation not worth sticking to. However, I do like novice and experienced lifters. If you are someone who is not familiar with exercise overall, or you are nervous or are exceedingly nervous maybe about using kettlebells for the first time, a 15-pounder is going to do just fine. You will outgrow it almost immediately. A 25-pounder for less strong people or people who have worked out a bit and are looking to introduce kettlebells, 25 pounds is a really good starter. 35 pounds, I would say, is like the ideal standard beginner's weight. Like I had mentioned earlier, I think that the 53-pounder, the 24 kilogram, aka a 50-pounder or a 55-pounder, is the quote-unquote standard weight for men. If you are a well-trained individual or someone who naturally has more strength, usually a guy, the 50 pounder is a good, like, get there kind of weight. It's not the one that I would recommend you start out with. Again, that would be probably a 25 and slash or a 35. You can grab one of those 35ers, like I said, on Amazon right now for like $40. That should be a place to start. You can start squatting it. You can start swinging it. You can not quite probably clean and press it just yet. I have a lot of clients that I've worked with, women who I've been working with kettlebells for a long time. And clean and pressing the 35 is always like, you made it kind of moment. That's a good strength stem. That's when you're like strong. You can deliver a full body routine every day for years with a single kettlebell. And I know because that's how I started. When I was in college, that's when I really started lifting for the first time. I dabbled in exercise in high school, but never anything too serious or organized. College is when I really started actually going to the gym. I didn't know where to start or what to do. I wasn't an athletic kid, but I decided to jump in and figure it out as I went. As an aside, I think that this was a really big turning point in my life overall. I mean, aside from the obvious reason that it's now my chosen profession as a career, but I think it's that jump then think philosophy that has now been responsible for everything I've accomplished as an adult. Perhaps a lot to my wife's chagrin. Mo is definitely a thinker and a planner, and I am a man of action. We'll say that because it sounds better than I am impatient and don't think things through all the time. But I'm a man of action. I'm good at figuring out as I go. I'd much rather do that. But I wasn't always that way. I used to be a kid who was, a lot of analysis paralysis. A lot of anxiety around the decisions I was trying to make. I didn't know where I belonged, what I was supposed to be doing. I felt like I never fit in. A big reason I gravitated towards the gym in the first place in college was because I was so. Here's time for some Rob lore. In college, I was so lonely. I had nothing going on. I could only play so much World of Warcraft, and I hated my classes, and I didn't have any friends, and I didn't like going to parties, and I didn't like drinking, and I didn't like dancing. I didn't have a car or a job. I just had fucking nothing going on in my life. I'm like 19, and I'm just like in a prison cell inside of my own brain, and it was fucking miserable. But the gym was a place to go. It was a thing to do, and I wanted to attract girls and overall feel better about myself. I went to magazines and the internet, like a lot of us do still these days, for inspiration. I specifically read men's health magazines, as many of us did at the time, especially dudes, and one issue in particular literally changed my life. And it was a Daniel Craig issue. He had just been in Casino Royale. And if you've seen the movie, you know that his physique was pretty incredible, even especially for the time. I remember in the article, he was talking about his training, and he said that he wanted his Bond to have a physique that when people saw it, you would think, yeah, that guy can kill people. And that was very attractive to me. And the routine they obviously they talk about him training for it, and they talk about his training routine, which might have been made up whole cloth for the article and not actually what he did. Probably, I don't know. But the routine in the article had pretty much everything: power cleans and bench press and deadlifting and squats, but it also included kettlebell swings, which I had never heard of experience before. So I looked it up there's like, 3 pictures of a little drawing of a guy doing a kettlebell swing, and they describe it a little bit in the article, like one sentence. So I went on the internet and found some blogs, if you remember those. This is before YouTube was as huge as it is today. And those detailed the benefits of kettlebell training and specifically how they were used extensively by special operations and MMA fighters and SWAT teams, etc. Tough guy ass kicking types, which is what I thought was really cool. I still think is really cool. Like, that's how I want to train for a lot of reasons. And because of that, I certainly was then, and still now, almost completely self-taught in kettlebells and their application. I didn't have access to a coach or a trainer at the time, and I certainly didn't have the funds for one, even if I did. It wasn't until the mid 20 teens that I went into my first official kettlebell coaching workshop. And by then, I'd been using them for so long that I basically co led the seminars that I was going to with the instructor. This is a NITA certification. And in 2017, I would finally get my RKC, my Russian Kettlebell Challenge coaching cert, and I would compete in the TSC in 2021. That's the Tactical Strength Challenge. Real quick, here's what those letters mean. Hold on. So in the world of kettlebells, specifically hardstyle and GPP, there are these two main schools. Again, this is very traditional martial arts. If you think of like a kung fu movie where there's two rival schools, this is like that. Kettlebell lore time. The Russian guy Pavel Zatsilin brought kettlebells in their techniques over to North America in I think like 2000 2001ish. He gets connected with a publishing company and a guy John Duquesne in of all places Minnesota. I want to say Apple Valley, Minnesota, actually, for the publishing company called Dragon Door. And they've been putting out a lot of publications about Eastern martial arts and like Tai Chi specifically. And for whatever reason, they were interested in kettlebells and they started to write books together, Pavel and John. And they really developed the hell out of kettlebells as like a thing and a brand and like a product and a school of thought and a philosophy and a method of training and a martial art and a way of life and all this stuff. But they had this friction. There was this split, and I don't know when it happened exactly, but the RKC had a schism and it broke off, and Pavel founded Strong First, which is their training techniques are pretty much identical, but the attitudes behind it are pretty distinct. Strong First is very much aimed at cops and soldiers and guys who want to play like they're cops and soldiers. You know what I'm talking about. RKC stayed very much like an of the people for the people sort of approach to it. I think that the pseudo militarism of Strong First looks down on the intentional accessibility brought to the front by the RKC. Anyways, this is deep niche lore, deep niche politics, basically, for something that doesn't matter right now. Anyways, eventually, I bought we're going to step out of that flashback to this flashback. Eventually, I bought my first 24 kilogram kettlebell, which is the standard weight for men, 53 pounds, from the RKC website for something like $110. This would have been in like 2013, 2012, 2013. And I still use it to this day. If you've trained with me at the Y or at Soda, you have seen the curse. You know the curse. That's that bell. That's my first bell. I still use it. So when I say it's a lifetime investment, that's what I'm talking about. I've had the thing for 10 plus years now. So let's say that you've done the same. Now you have a single kettlebell. Now what? Well, there are nearly infinite techniques and variations of movements you can do with a kettlebell. But for my money, the three most important, and I might get some pushback on this from other kettlebell nerds, but who knows who listens to this. The three most important movements are the swing, the clean and press, and the squat. With these three movements together, if you only do three movements with a kettlebell ever, with the swing, the clean and press, and the squat, you can do pretty much anything. If you want to lose weight, get strong, get bigger, get smaller, get better at carrying your dog up the stairs or running into a burning building to save a family or whatever, or get better at martial arts or swinging a baseball bat or doing Zumba. These three movements will get you there. It's a full body everything. And obviously I can't teach you these moves over a podcast. Maybe worse even than the written word is a podcast format for teaching exercises. But I am available for coaching, both online and in person now. So reach out or keep an eye on my socials. because I do plan to put out some short and longer in-depth tutorials on these moves in the next probably month or two here. If you don't have access to coaching like I didn't back in the day, you should still attempt to self-teach like I did. There's hours now of YouTube videos out there showing you how to execute these techniques safely. And once you master just a handful, the whole world of kettlebells opens up to you. If you buy your kettlebell and it's sitting at your feet in your living room, right now you're in the tutorial mode. And once you can do a swing, a clean and press, and a squat pretty well with that one, like then it's like in Breath of the Wild when you get the hang glider and all of a sudden like oh, the entire world is open now. There's infinite things you can do. And why these moves? Why are they so important? Well, the swing is the bread and butter of the kettlebell. It's the unique selling point of it. It's the thing its shape makes it suited for more than a dumbbell. Certainly, if I could only do or teach one exercise for the rest of my life, it would be the kettlebell swing, just because I think it is the answer to so many questions. It is the solution to so many problems when you know how to do it right. The clean and press is basically that, but for your upper body specifically. The clean is a pull. The press obviously is a press. You push it overhead. For the longest time, though, for the past probably 2 years, maybe even longer, the majority of my strength training for my upper body has basically just been clean and press with a whole bunch of push-ups thrown in there and the occasional pull-up. And very recently, I got back into bench pressing with a barbell, and I was afraid that I would have to start basically like I could do like a shadow of my former self when I would bench press. But I got under that bar, dude, and I am repping 200 pounds in my first session back with it. That's unheard of for me. Like I had consigned myself to the idea that my body can't lift 200 pounds regularly. Like I had done it before in my life, but I thought it was like a fluke kind of thing. But no, that's just like my working weight now. And that's thanks mostly to doing heavy clean and press. It works, you guys. And the squat, if we're talking about a single kettlebell exercise, we're looking at most likely a goblet squat. This is going to work the muscles in the lower body and your core and your biceps and your shoulders and your grip that aren't getting torched by the swing or your clean and press. But what I think is really interesting and helpful about the squat, specifically the goblet squat, is actually the benefits it has for your hip and knee and ankle mobility, your ability to move, to squat low. Something about the way you hold the kettlebell in a goblet squat really pulls you down into that really deep, like ass to grass squat. And not right away, obviously. It's not a magic spell. It takes time, like a real spell, like actual black magic. You have to practice. You have to open yourself to certain powers and be willing to be humbled by the iron for a while before you can unlock these special abilities, which is to squat very deep. I have done I don't know how many countless goblet squats, and I think a lot of my hip mobility and the strength of my joints and my knees and the resilience of my ankles that I have really, really enjoyed now that I am doing more jujitsu again in my advancing age. It's funny to say at 37 years old, my advancing age for a combat sport athlete. Goblet squats help my knees stay where they are supposed to be. Goblet squats help my ankles stay where they're supposed to be when I'm moving around. That's about it. Yep, talking about swings. Okay, so that's why they're so great. Good transition, Rob. Chapter 3, Myths and Misconceptions. Now, because kettlebells are a relative unknown, they're often misunderstood. And because of that, there's a lot of fear around them. And I would like to dispel those fears and some of those misconceptions right now. Starting with the big one. Kettlebells are bad for your back. Kettlebells will wreck your back or your knees or your neck or your body or whatever. No. being weak will wreck your body. If you think it's dangerous to lift weights, try being weak for your whole life. Not only is that actually dangerous, sucks shit. Don't choose weakness. Being uncautious during exercise and not respecting the weight is, as I like to say, flagrantly injurious. I have done so many swings in my life. Like I said, self taught. I don't think I've ever slipped a disc or whatever from it. I don't think in the in my working memory, I do not recall an instance in which I have swung a kettlebell and injured my back from it. I've injured my back getting out of the car, you know, sitting wrong, sleeping wrong. I hurt my back waking up, but not while swinging a kettlebell. It's because I've done so many kettlebell swings. And I think part of what this misconception particularly comes from is soreness in the lower back. People are so afraid. People are terrified injuring their lower back, and I get it. It sucks. So much of your ability to sit is diminished with lumbar pain. When your erector spinae, the muscles on either side of your spine, go down all the way from the middle of your back to your tailbone. There's only two muscles that hold your spine up in your lumbar area. That's your erector spinae. They're not very big, but they can be very strong. Most people, they're pretty darn weak. So when we train them with something like a kettlebell swing, when you use a kettlebell swing, your back is not the prime engine for that movement. Your back is working, those muscles are being activated, but your back should be flat, your core should be braced, your abs should be feeling it, but your ass is doing the work, just like in everything else in your everyday life. Ass is doing most of the work, your glutes are fine, your hamstrings are doing it, your posterior chain is providing power and stability, and your lumbar, your lower back specifically, is doing the job of stabilizing. So is your front abs, your rectus abdominis. But when people do kettlebell swings the next day, they feel soreness in their low back, and the knee jerk reaction is, oh my God, I'm injured. Because I am aware of my lower back. Because I can feel anything there, it is an injury. It is bad. Kettlebells are bad. I have wrecked myself. Wrong. What you are feeling is DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, an extremely common, perfectly natural, and totally temporary symptom of strength training. The muscles in your back, which are undertrained, have experienced a stimulus that they have not experienced before, and they're in the process of recovering. Take a few days, I need to stretch, put some hot water or an ice patch on it or something like that. You are not wrecked, you are not hurt, you are not even you are not as delicate as you are led to believe. And see my last episode about why everyone thinks they are made of glass. I digress. Myth 2, kettlebells don't work. / you can't get jacked with kettlebells. Oh boy. Boy, do I have thoughts on this one. The sole goal of exercise is not getting jacked. There are other reasons to work out. There are other reasons to train. Kettlebells are a tool. I would say the best tool overall, but for something as specific, albeit ignoble, as bodybuilding, fine. They're not the best tool for that job. What a shame. You can't micro load your bicep curls with them. But hey, if you want a tool that will bulletproof you, build powerful hips, strong shoulders, and earn you an intimidating upper back, then you should use kettlebells. Myth 3, misconception 3. Only CrossFitters use kettlebells? What the fuck are you talking about? CrossFit might be the only exposure you've had to kettlebells, but the only exposure I've ever had to sea lions was in the zoo, and I don't think that all sea lions only live in zoos. Broaden your mind. CrossFit has done a lot for and to the fitness community overall, exposure, I think, is the greatest thing that CrossFit has done for working out for people in general. Part of that is the exposure to kettlebells. In fact, I had asked people in the Discord earlier today if they had questions about it. I had asked people earlier today in the Discord if they had questions about it. And Bree asked something specific. Do you think yeah. What are your thoughts on the distaste towards kettlebells? Do you think it's because of the bad stigma towards bad CrossFitters that use kettlebells? Thus, kettlebells are inherently, quote, bad because we only see the bad online, which is a really astute observation, Brie. Yes. What do you do in your training to teach people when used properly how powerful they can be? I've kind of talked about that already. How do you support your trainees with the use of them? That is a good question. I always start with a progression. So I've talked about the swing a bazillion times. This is where we're going. When you talk about kettlebells, we're almost always talking about the kettlebell swing specifically. With the swing, the base progression for me starts with a kettlebell wedge, which is a sort of hybrid of a good morning and a deadlift, where you hold the kettlebell sort of right up against your belly button like a stamp, and then push your tailbone out behind you and kind of bend at the hip naturally. You crease at the hip. That's the cue you hear a lot. Kettlebell stuff, which again doesn't make a lot of sense on a podcast, but I'll be making some videos about this coming up soon. And Bree continues, I know for me personally, when I use kettlebells at the gym, especially those swings, I get some side eyes / bad looks. Although, goddamn, I am sweating and strong. Correct, Bree, you are sweating and you are very strong. And as for side eyes, I don't know, man. Fuck them. Haters can die mad. That's all I got. Fuck them. Fuck the haters. Chapter 4, summary and conclusion. I hope that this episode can help to explain my affinity for the modest kettlebell. As a tool for fitness and athletic development, it is versatile and efficient in a way no other implement can hope to match. Kettlebells build power, shred fat, and improve ability faster than machines or barbells or dance class or cardio ever could. They are one of the best return on investments you'll ever make, as 1 or 2 bells are a future-proof home gym that you can use to chase almost any fitness goal for the rest of your life if you so choose. Your skills cross over to real life more smoothly with kettlebells. Their variable movement is more closely resembles carrying a squirming child or dog, holding an odd-shaped object, or training your core to brace and absorb impact at a moment's notice. Not to mention, you can develop insane power and endurance critical in most sports with a one-time purchase of a round hunk of metal. But perhaps the thing I like most about it is its deceptive simplicity and accessibility. It is a tool for the people, by the people. From its humble beginnings up through its modern, still somewhat underground following, these iron-handled cannonballs have been carving out space for themselves in the routines of circus performers, elite athletes, stay-at-home moms, tier 1 operators, and athletic nerds for years. I hope to continue that legacy and to pass my love for this practice onto as many people as it possibly can. Maybe even to you. This has been the RF Fitness Podcast. Yes, I am available for online coaching and in person. To find out if it's right for you, head to rffitness.net. That's rffitness.net. And then scroll all the way to the bottom of the page to see what kind of coaching I offer. You should do the client application and be sure to hit join the party to jump in our community Discord server for free. Our theme music is usually Funk AF by Everett Ullman, but today it was the Howard Shore intro to Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Rings, distributed by whoever distributes that. Thank you for listening, guys, and as always, keep questing.